At exactly 9:12 that morning, the judge lifted his eyes from his sealed government report and spoke my name. Every sound in the room disappeared. My stepbrother stopped smiling. My mother froze with her hand halfway to her face. The same people who had spent years dismissing me suddenly looked like they had forgotten how to speak. They walked into that courtroom expecting another family disagreement. What they got instead was a mountain of evidence backed by federal records, medical reports, and facts they could not explain away. My name is Riley Carter, and for most of my life, I was invisible inside my own family. From the outside, we looked perfect, the kind of family neighbors admired from a distance. The lawn was always cut, holiday photos were always smiling. Every Christmas card looked like it belonged in a magazine. My mother, Diane, worked hard to maintain that image because appearances meant everything to her. She believed that if something unpleasant was ignored long enough, it simply stopped existing. My stepfather, Richard, followed her lead, and my stepbrother, Brandon, was the shining star at the center of their carefully crafted world. Every family gathering felt exactly the same. Brandon would walk into the room and immediately become the focus of everyone's attention. My mother would light up the second she saw him. Brandon got another promotion, she would announce proudly. Everyone would clap and congratulate him while he stood there grinning like a celebrity accepting an award. Meanwhile, I could spend months accomplishing something meaningful and barely receive a glance. I still remember one dinner where I shared news that I had completed one of the most demanding certifications available in my field. It was an achievement that required years of work and countless sleepless nights. Richard barely looked at me before patting my hand. "That is nice, sweetheart. Keep doing that government work. Stable jobs are important." Stable, that word always irritated me. They had no idea what my work actually involved. They did not know about the classified reports, the security clearances, or the responsibility resting on my shoulders every day. They imagined I sat behind a desk pushing paperwork while Brandon was the ambitious success story. Eventually, I stopped trying to explain myself. When you spend years being overlooked, you learn how to become quiet. You learn how to shrink yourself to avoid disappointment. You learn how to smile while your accomplishments disappear into the background. My mother preferred it that way. Whenever I spoke passionately about something important, she would laugh and tell me I was overthinking everything. According to her, life was meant to be simple. What she really meant was that my truth made her uncomfortable. The favoritism became impossible to ignore. If Brandon showed up 2 hours late to a holiday dinner smelling like alcohol and carrying another excuse, my mother welcomed him with open arms. If I arrived 10 minutes late because of work, she would lecture me about responsibility and respect. For years I convinced myself it did not matter. I was wrong. The breaking point started during a summer barbecue. The backyard was filled with smoke from the grill and the smell of cheap beer. Brandon stood near Richard boasting about another promotion while everyone laughed at his stories. At one point, I mentioned that my team had helped prevent a serious international security threat. My mother rolled her eyes. "You always make everything sound so dramatic, Riley." The table laughed. I smiled politely, but those words stayed with me long after everyone went home. That night I sat alone on the porch holding a cup of coffee and staring into the darkness. Fireflies drifted across the yard while the humid summer air wrapped around me. I realized something important. In my professional life, silence protected people. Inside my family, silence protected lies. I had no idea how important that realization would become. A few months later, everything changed. It was sometime after 4 in the morning when I heard a loud crash from the kitchen. I walked downstairs and found Brandon standing in front of the refrigerator. The room glowed with pale blue light. Empty bottles covered the counter. The second he saw me, his expression twisted into a familiar smirk. "Could not sleep, government girl?" I told him he should get some rest. That was enough to set him off. He started insulting my career, my life, and eventually me. Then he repeated something that made my stomach drop. "Mom says nobody wants to be around you anyway." Those were not his words. They belonged to her. I could hear voices and laughter coming from the living room. They were awake. They were listening. I turned away hoping the argument would end. Then I heard a drawer slide open. When I looked back, Brandon was holding a screwdriver. "Put it down," I said. Instead, he smiled. There was something unsettling in his eyes. "You are always so dramatic." Then he rushed forward. Pain exploded through my shoulder. Everything happened at once. My legs gave out beneath me. Blood soaked through my shirt. The kitchen floor slammed against my side. As my vision blurred, I heard laughter. Then I heard my mother's voice. "Stop being dramatic, Riley." Even now, years later, those words are harder to forget than the injury itself. The next thing I remember was waking up in a hospital bed. Machines beeped around me. My shoulder felt like it was on fire. A few moments later, my mother entered the room with Richard close behind. The story was already prepared. Apparently I had fallen. Apparently I had injured myself by accident. Apparently Brandon felt terrible. The lie was delivered so smoothly it sounded rehearsed. As she spoke, I realized something important. They were not protecting me, they were protecting him. The second they left my hospital room, I reached for my phone and accessed a secure emergency channel connected to my agency. My voice remained calm as I reported the assault and activated an official distress protocol. Within hours, federal investigators became involved. Every detail was documented: the injury, the scene, the timeline, the evidence. For the first time in my life, facts mattered more than family loyalty. Weeks later, we found ourselves in court. Brandon arrived wearing a suit and carrying the same arrogance he always had. My mother looked annoyed rather than concerned. His attorney described the entire incident as a misunderstanding. Then he called me emotional. He called me dramatic. The same word that had followed me for years. But this time was different. This time, evidence was waiting. My attorney submitted a sealed federal report documenting everything from the emergency distress signal to the medical findings collected that night. The judge opened the file. As he read, the mood inside the courtroom changed. The emergency activation, the location data, the blood evidence, the toxicology report, the weapon, every page destroyed another lie. By the time the judge finished reading, Brandon looked terrified. My mother tried interrupting. The judge immediately shut her down. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. Finally, the judge looked directly at me. Miss Carter, it appears your attention to detail protected more than your career. It protected your future. Then he turned toward Brandon. The restraining order was approved immediately. Felony assault charges were referred for prosecution. The courtroom erupted into whispers. Brandon was escorted away in handcuffs. My mother called after me. She begged, she cried, she insisted he never meant it. But something inside me had already changed. For years, I wanted them to understand me. Now I understood them. That was enough. When I walked out of the courthouse, sunlight spilled across the steps. The air felt different somehow. Cleaner, lighter. For the first time in my life, I was no longer carrying the burden of proving my worth. The truth had done that for me. 1 year later, I stood inside a secure operations center overlooking the city skyline. A small scar remained on my shoulder. I touched it occasionally, not because it hurt, but because it reminded me of something important. Survival is not always about winning. Sometimes it is about refusing to surrender your reality to people who benefit from denying it. That morning, an email from my mother appeared in my inbox. The subject line contained an apology. I never opened it. I archived it and returned to work. Some doors deserve to stay closed, and some silences are earned.